Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the audio talk. We're going to do telling stories, shaping feelings. That's the art of sound design, the artistry of sound design, how to kind of think about sound design from your own perspective, your own ideas, and understanding various tropes of sound. Hi, it's me. My name is Hurd-Lorenz. I have 10 years of sound designing for video games. I know there's SCAD people here, so I was a SCAD Savannah graduate, 2014. Go Bees, I think that's what their team's called. Fantastic place, loved it. So yeah, I've been out of school for a while and jumped right into video games, like sound design for video games. And there is crossover between composition and sound design, but I am strictly the sound person, so kind of the person that where music comes through us. We do the sound effects, we do the ambiences, we do the dialogue, anything that comes out of the speakers for this video game goes through us. So some of my work from the last 10 years, don't get too impressed by the Destiny and Horizon Zero Dawn. I have worked on them. I did some cinematics for it. For Destiny 2, I think I did the dogs. So those were me. And yeah, we've got a couple other games. Ori and the Will of the Wisp was on the original sound team for it. And Witness was actually my first game that I shipped. Blessed. It was fantastic. I loved working on it. And then yeah, some Mundan is this wonderful little indie game. We'll show a lot of that with it. That's kind of my my last shipped project, because I have been working on this game called Judas by Ghost Story Games for the last 5 years. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait for everyone to see it. It's by the creator of BioShock. So the BioShock franchise, guys, it's his new game that he's been developing for 13 years. So that's why most of my stuff is from 5 years ago that's going to be in this presentation. Lots of fun things to unpack there. Also, down at the Expo show, run Avant Beetle, which is kind of an experimental and alternative video game exhibition here in Atlanta. We do pop-up galleries that feature games from all over the world that kind of challenge the notion of video games as kind of this art form. And so we do themed shows. It's fantastic. Come by, say hi. We'll tell you all about it. It's wonderful. All right. So coming back to the original slide, telling stories, shaping feelings. This is why we're actually here. This is the artistry of sound design. So who is this talk for? This talk is kind of an introduction to the techniques, how to utilize sound in meaningful ways. So this is kind of I know a lot of you are sound design musician people. And when I originally wrote this is for developers, but it's not so untechnical that it's not for y'all. I'm just trying to come from a different perspective around narrative games, audio storytelling, what you can utilize to find inspiration for finding your own sound. Because sound is an extremely powerful tool, and it's one of my favorite tools. So it's let's see, yeah, here we go. It's an overview of finding your own sound in the game. So like any art form, you need to take into account what the rules are, where to take inspiration from, where to break the rules, how to find your own way. What is sound design? So sound design is the craft of creating auditory moments to design and persuade the listener's experience with intentionality. Now, the key word there is intentionality. That's kind of why we see this as an art form. There's a famous saying that's kind of for film, is that sound is half, if not more. What takes up the film experience. And yeah, because most media only takes up 1 or 2 senses of ours. Now, video games, you can kind of argue there's also haptics with it, so that's kind of a third one. But for the most part, we're really just talking about 1, visuals, and 2, audio. And so I like to say that the audio team is the smallest team usually in the production, that has the most expansive use of power that we have for emotion. And that's because music and sound is so ingrained into like the human experience. It like speaks to almost this like reptilian brain of ours. Like, you know, you can have a sound, a big explosion, and immediately your brain's just going to be like fight or flight. What do I do? Now, obviously, we're not going to like jump out. I don't know, TBD. There's some horror games out there that are pretty good at that. But it's such a visceral thing. And we have, as the audio team, like such a powerful responsibility. And oh, really power. I was trying to think of another word for it, but that works too. What do we got else? Yeah, sound design is the practice of creating audio in a meaningful way that helps uplift the story. We're going to go a little bit faster on these. It creates emotional moments. It also provides, and this one's, excuse me, I had to burp. It also provides immersion and perspective, which is kind of like more of an unknown one, but integral to creating sounds for all of this. Yeah, so audio, absolutely fundamental for mood, atmosphere, storytelling. It's the manipulator of emotion. All right, but wait. Before we go hog wild on designing sounds and making all these things, we got to talk about the box. Now, what is the box? The box is kind of, you know, the idea of to like create good like art, you need to like think outside of the box, you know, like come up with new ideas that are fun. But before you do that, you need to know what the box is. And I'm gonna do my best, you know, maybe not so quickly way to kind of show everyone like here are some of, you know, the media literacy is what I'll call, and I'll go into that a little bit more. But it's basically like borrowing from the past, seeing what works, and then how it applies to, you know, the contemporaries. So I'm going to go a little bit abstract here. I want y'all to kind of bear with me. But there is an idea that all art forms borrow from the previous art form. If you were at Scruffy's talk, there's a lot of talk about like, you know, use it like a film. And that holds very true. And you can take this idea that art forms borrow from the previous one all the way back, because like a film, like, yeah, it's video games borrowed a lot from film because it was the biggest source of mass media that was like popularized. But what did film borrow from? Film borrowed from theater. What did theater borrow from? Well, that goes all the way back to rituals. And so you can have this through line of like the inspirations, and from that, specific moments in each one that has carried through. And so right now, I'll give you an example. So theater, way back when, they were developing some kind of scene, and they were like, it needs to be dreamlike. There's this dream scene. How do we convey this otherworldly idea? And someone somewhere was like, let's use fog. And so they said, wow, that really worked. Fog, it's kind of obstructing. It's kind of got this ethereal quality to it. And so it became a trope, the use of fog in dreamscapes. And so now we go to film. Fog is still very much used. And, you know, if you think about film way back when, they had these big camera boxes that you couldn't move around. So with a static camera, you know, you're basically projecting or recording what is kind of a stage. And so they kept this idea of like, we need a dream sequence. What do we do? Let's put some fog in there because it's what we know. It's what we know. It's what the audience knows. And they can put two and two together to say, okay, sweet, we've got fog. Something otherworldly is happening. So that's like kind of film. And now, nothing's changed. Like Silent Hill, one of the most famous video games, is like, all right, you're in a weird dream, other reality world, and then technical limitations aside, I'm sure y'all have like heard about it, but they're like, fog. Why not use fog? So this is a whole through line of something that has worked and something that the audience kind of knows. Maybe they understand it in a like conscious way or unconscious way. But it created this media literacy, what I call. All right. So what does that mean for audio? You know, we were talking about fog before, but the same thing goes all the way back. Usually with audio, it's kind of like starts from film. And let me see if we've got this. So here's a little clip from a movie. I hope it's not too loud. Okay. Gotta love the sound from the 70s. But listen to this part. It's the ever famous tinnitus sound. And so this was the first film that explored, like, okay, something really big happened. How do we go into the perspective of the character? And they say, like, yeah, well, whenever this happens, you know, your ears kind of go dark. You maybe like hear a little ringing, and it worked really well to the point where, like, go further down the line, we're using it. It's expanded on. More and more people are kind of coming up with their own flavors to it. And now, video games. Sorry for the high frequency noises. But now, if you're playing any kind of combat game, you get an explosion, you get the tinnitus sound. Everything in the world kind of like falls down into it. And that's because, A, it's like kind of based in realism, but there's also a sense of this kind of like perspective taking into it. So kind of what does all of this mean? I've been blabbing on for like maybe 10 minutes about this stuff, but go back into various games that you enjoy, various media, even music, and just kind of like try to understand what works, why you like it, and you can totally implement whatever you want. Like we're building this media literacy up as we go, especially for games, and the more we progress this, the more ingrained it kind of becomes. So like use the stuff that works, you know, it's wonderful. Where am I at? All right, yeah, so here's another example of some audio tropes, referencing from film. Haunted house. Ghastly voices. This was the first movie to do it. I don't remember the movie's title. But, you know, when it came out, the entire audience was like, oh man, that's so creepy. Wow. So worried. Silence. It's the same thing. We're just using stuff that comes from the past and we say, wow, I really liked that, and we're going to pull it forward. Because, you know, all great artists steal. It's such a quintessential thing, but like by stealing, you're still coming up with your own way around it. And now, gonna flip it on its head a little bit. So you're talking about, yeah, like mental state of characters. Sensuna's Saga, the horror movie before, you know, has this idea of, you know, like the mental state of this character, like this long-held tradition that like hearing voices inside of a head, you know, there aren't there. Ooh, it's like spooky. And, you know, I don't want to like minimize any semblance of schizophrenia or like other mental disorders. But what this brings up is kind of like we have tropes that like work and like have become media literacy ingrained in our like society. But also, does it actually like is it kind of like punching down in certain respects? Like, do we have things that we just kind of like take for granted that are kind of like minimizing or like dramatizing in certain ways? So this whole idea of like tropes, you can kind of like shift it and kind of be like, okay, well, why do these tropes work? And is it actually like a good representation, you know? So when you're like making your game and you're like, my character is in like this like mental distress state, don't grasp at straws and be like, okay, so we're gonna have a tinnitus sound and we're gonna have voices in their head. Stop to ask yourself, wait, why? Does it do anything to the story? Are we adding the right story to it? And then you go from there. So utilize tropes, steal all you want, But then at the end of the day, ask why. Why is it that this is what you want to do, and make sure that it's the right story. All right. Sorry, I need my coffee. I'm projecting a lot. My mouth is dry. We're going to talk about one more thing that's hugely fundamental for all media. So important that it's not even a trope anymore. It's a law. You know, kind of like the scientific theory. Like, this has been tested. This isn't a theory anymore. This is a law. And it's this thing called the Kuleshov effect. And what it is it's a juxtaposition of two images that create a story based on the information that is given. And if you see, we have shot number 1, a bowl of food. Shot number 2, portrait of a man. What does that say? Oh, skipping. So it means the man is hungry, just by putting two things together. And then it'll go through more. The shot of the man hasn't changed. Kuleshov effect number 2. I'm sorry, it's very dark. It's that dead child. And now the man is grieving. Shot number 3, it's a woman lounging ever so beautifully. Now he's, I don't know, lustful or something like that. So this one image hasn't changed, but the preceding image has, and it's telling you vast different stories. All right, so Eric, you're a sound designer. Why aren't we talking about sound? Well, you can do the same exact thing with sound. This is essentially what the Kuleshov effect is, but with audio. So we have a scene that is a nice little train ride going through the snowy Swiss countryside. Isn't it nice? It's kind of Christmassy. What stories come up when you see this? You know, you're like, oh, I'm going home. I'm on break. I was just working a whole bunch. Oh, it's a beautiful mountain. Like, everything's serene and it's gorgeous. There's this sense of peace. Oh, I think I have to pause. There we go. Same scene. I didn't do anything different to it. I'm going to my death. That mountain that I was like, oh, that's a beautiful mountain. Isn't this so wonderful and peaceful? I'm like, there's a demon inside of it. Like, I'm going to this mountain to die. All because all I did was shift the music. And it's such an important thing to think about when you're making your game, because you have so many scenes that are in there, and like, let's say you're like, okay, this is a very pivotal, important scene. How quickly can I, like, you know, go into that? And music is always such an easy way to just swing someone one way, and then, you know, you can swing them the other way. It's just this, like, it's this beautiful manipulator of emotion. So keep in mind, you always have the ability to suggest an emotion based on something that isn't visual. All right, going back around. Thanks for keeping up with me. This has kind of been really fun. I'm having a great time. So we're gonna let's get a little more into the practicality of sound design. There's going to be 2 key ideas that I want y'all to think about when thinking about sound in sound design. One is realism, the other is hyperrealism. So realism. There's a famous saying that I learned back in school all the time, and that's good sound design is best when you can't tell it's there. So what does that mean? That means you're inhabiting the space that you're in. It makes everything believable. Realism, excuse me, hope that came through, provides a sense of believability and helps immerse the player inside the character. And that's going to be a key baseline when you're creating your audio for your game. Because when you step on some wood, it sounds like the wood that you step on. It sounds like the shoe, the specific type of shoe that you're stepping in. It's when we knock over, you know, a chair, it sounds like that chair is hitting the ground. If we throw a chair, it sounds like the chair is slamming into the ground. And all of these examples kind of help the believability that the player is inhabiting the character. And it creates this emotional connection that will only help you tell your story to the best of your ability. It's the idea for realism is this kind of idea that like you're convincing the player that the world is reactive, similar into a way that is ours. And so when you get that, then you get this buy-in that like everything's believable. So for an example, this is Last of Us 2, and nothing's really going on. So what do we hear? Might be hard to hear a little over this, but you kind of get the sense of the idea. You're hearing the footsteps on the concrete. There's kudzu or grass, and as we're transitioning over it, you can hear the leaves on the concrete. Then you hear just the leaves on the dirt. You hear the like swishing of the cloth. You hear the backpack. She picks up a bottle, and you can hear the bottle swishing in your hand, and all of that creates this like I am in it. You know, like you're so close up to the screen, and you just believe that you're inhabiting the whole thing. And it's not just AAA games, but indie games as well. So unpacking, a game that's all about unpacking your belongings. And if you also went to the other audio talk, talked about this as well. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of assets of here's an object on the carpet, here's an object on the table, in the center of the table, onto the side of the table. And I argue that it's so wonderful and important to have those kind of things because it makes you believe that you're inside that space. Now, it's wildly expensive, and usually in kind of like AAA spaces, this is the kind of thing that gets like outsourced, because if like the main team is working on this, well, we'll never get to that quest, or we'll never get to that like other thing. But it comes back tenfold in terms of like audible fidelity, even the player engagement fidelity, and it creates the baseline of the believability of your game. All right, so we did realism. Now let's twist it a little more. This is going to be a fun one. It's called hyperrealism. So why do I have Impressionist paintings on? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I'm a bit of an art nerd. The Impressionists back then, they were the first artists for any kind of media that not only depicted what they saw in front of them, but how they felt. It's going into a pasture and saying like, wow, like that sky, that's blue. Why not make it the most beautiful blue? You know, you don't need to replicate reality. We've already done that in the past with like the Renaissance painters. We have found the canon of painting. It's wonderful. So where do we go from there? Well, let's look inward. And they were, well, I lost my place in the notes. Nope, already covered it. Sweet, I'm already ahead of myself. Essentially, yeah, they were the first people to kind of be like, let's think about intrinsically, how do we feel about this subject that is in front of us, and then painted from there. And so you can do this with audio. In fact, it's integral now for audio, especially in games, for sure movies, but games, oh, I'm excited to show you. So here's Limbo. Listen to the spider hitting the ground. One more time. Hopefully you were able to hear it. But what does a spider's like leg sound like when it is walking, when it slams? Even if it is a huge giant spider, the legs are still the most light part of a spider's body. So if a spider did that, it would probably sound like or Just like that's it. And so what this idea of hyperrealism comes into play is, what is the character thinking? How does the character feel when that spider's foot hits the ground? And it's huge. And so even though we're rejecting the realism of it, we're adding in these larger than life characteristics. We're abstracting it. We're making it sound huge. We're adding bass. We're distorting it, adding certain layers, because it's not about the realism of what it sounds like for a giant spider to hit the ground. It's how does the person feel about it? Yeah?
I had an observation about like the spider. So I like the fact that it sort of, as its foot went down, it sort of cut through the air, making it seem like it was sharp to let the player know that
Yeah.
the die, that this isn't just a clip, but it's more so something that would impale you if you got hit by it.
Yeah. So it's that information that's also coming in, because, you know, like I said before, spider's foot is coming down. That's not going to make much of a sound. It might make a little bit of a sound, but let's make that the main aspect of what we hear, so that way we can inform the player. And we'll get into that real soon. All right. Oh, perfect. This is kind of it. So another huge aspect of hyperrealism is the information. And doors have kind of been a famous example, because think about in your house, how many doors creak in it? Say you have like 6, maybe 7 doors, 1 or 2 creak. In film and in games, how many doors creak? Every single one. Every single one will creak. You open a door in a video game and you hear, nope. And you also hear, oh, we're coming back to that. Essentially, like this is just like from my sound effects library. You just type in doors, and there's nothing that's silent. All the doors are creaking, because you get to hear the like intricate details of it. Because hyperrealism not only establishes a mood, it establishes an additional layer to our senses. It's information, it's player feedback. Even if there's no overt storytelling element of an oven opening or something, it helps the player process what's going on in the game, what is the key information, and yeah, it turns out, congrats, it's an accessibility option now. Hyperrealism helps the player understand what they're doing inside the game. And one example is, I was like, yes, Last of Us 2, fantastic realism. Things don't sound like that. You're picking up some scrap material, like you're sneaking. Why? I'm sneaking. Why am I gonna like go over to this thing and just be like clonk, clonk? That's not realism, but it's information. So that way you can be engaged with it and know exactly, yes, I picked up that that resource. I picked up, I think I had it over, oh, I can't get to it because of this. It's even not even like a super realistic sound. It's almost like a UI sound. And then coming over to one more thing, it's a bat. Hear it scrape up. It's the information of, okay, sweet, my character has picked up a bat. I'm sneaking. Why does it sound like that? But it's to let people know, like, the weight of the bat. It tells the story of what kind of thing is going to come and happen next. It's maybe gonna go bash some heads in with that bat. I don't know. It's all just information. Okay, so we talked about the emotional, which is like the limbo clip, the inside the character's head. We're talking about the practical, Last of Us 2, the information accessibility aspect of hyperrealism. But hyperrealism, you can take it as far as you want. You can embed new characteristics, add suggestive ideas to your sounds. Here's an example from the indie game I worked on, Mundan, where basically you're in a cave and it's like where the enemy is, and it's this kind of like demon devil sort of person. And inside those caves, we had these vents in it that kind of like, you know, just were exhaust vents. And so I was like, sweet, exhaust vents, right on. You know, a little bit of steam in there. But wait, what if we gave some extra characteristics to this mountain? What if the mountain coughed? What if we wanted to have this idea, oh gosh, my slides are going everywhere, that like these aren't just vents that hiss and kind of like smoke up. What if I want to give some more emotional depth to this thing that is in front of us? Maybe I give it a little humanity to it. Maybe I give a little bit of this, a little bit, you know, a little coughing. You can do whatever you want to it because you can help develop stories as you go along. Like a sound isn't just a sound, it's an opportunity for all kinds of stories. Do I have anything else around it? Oh yeah, so this kind of side of the definition of hyper in hyperrealism is because like you don't have set boxes. You can go so far with it that you can be like almost poetic with it. And I kind of like to call this sort of aspect, you know, in poetry, there's like metaphors and similes. Like metaphors kind of being like, you know, your eyes are the moon to describe how like wonderful bright eyes are. Similes are your eyes are like the moon. You're keeping the realistic aspect of it, but you're introducing this new idea that adds suggestive ideas onto it. And so you can do that literally in anything you design, any sort of asset to help progress the story. Gives you a little, you know, a little narrative sprinkling in everything you do. Did my, oh, we're going. Okay. So I've been talking a little bit about stories and assets. So now let's begin with the story within each sound. The main question I want you all to come across or to come out of this talk with is essentially, what story are you trying to tell? This is a huge, huge idea for anything that you're doing, whether you're like VFX, whether you're level design. Always come back to what story are you trying to tell? There are many different ways to go about this aspect. So, you know, let's start from the micro and go a little bit macro. Kind of similar to like the realism aspect of it. The story is also basically very, very similar. So this is going to be from the witness. These are just footsteps. And so I'm going to introduce a tiny little story in this clip. And I hope that you understand what it kind of means. Did you catch it? It's the rocks falling off the cliff. There are no rocks falling off the cliff. There's no visuals of the rocks falling off the cliff. And even the asset for that texture is just dirt. And so you're coming across this space that's kind of like, oh, it's very narrow. What if I suggested a little bit of danger? And in it, use like, I mean, essentially what we used was just kind of like a volume override that is like when the player footstep hits, play this extra sound. And the extra sound is of rocks falling off the cliff. Because like footsteps aren't just footsteps, sounds aren't just sounds. You can add so many things. Like how heavy are the feet when they hit the ground? How unstable is the cliff on the dirt? All of this stuff, you completely have the authority to tell more stories. And even with UI, excuse me, sorry, hold on, just got it gassy today. Sorry, guys. Okay, so it's not even just, sorry, my wife was just like, oh, Jesus. It's not even just like specific assets that are within the game. You can take it to UI as well. So take Overwatch, for example. Tasty. Kind of synthy, a little sci-fi. Very sleek. It's a little... just, so good. And it's because the game is also similar in that vein. it's fast-paced, it's sleek, it's tuned, it's sci-fi. It's got a little bit of those kind of like synthy tones to it that are very popular in like sci-fi sound design. Now, gonna flip it over to my folk horror game. The UI looks different. And so this is all organic. The themes of the game is kind of just organic. Why I can't just put like a sci-fi like, oh, we're going into the game. So what do you do for a game that's like sepia tone? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sepia tone and like surrounded in the wilderness. You get some sticks. There's a lot of sticks lying around, so you hit some sticks together and be like, that's a click. It's within the world, and the player never gets kind of like lost in like, or I guess not lost, more like taken out of the themes of the area. So even UI, huge part of like helping to tell a story. So the last section was character of a character, individual assets. Now we can go a little bit farther out and build up the world. For this example, I want to use basically elevators. Elevators are in lots of games, but there's lots of different ways to go about making an elevator. And this is an opportunity for you to develop the idea of what your world is like. You know, obviously, does it sound like, is it being pulled up by a bunch of like rudimentary weights? Is it kind of hydraulic based? Is it a little more sleeker? Is the technology further along? Is it really further along? Or, oh, it's still going. Or is it completely falling apart? And these are all questions that you should be asking yourself whenever you go to make a sound, whenever you go think about making sounds, or thinking about what sound can do for the world. Every single asset, ask, what story are you trying to tell? With the elevator, I'm trying to tell that this palace is in great condition, so it's going to be a pretty quiet elevator, and like almost to the point where like you don't notice it. Or if you're like, this whole place is about to fall apart, go ahead, let the player notice it, and because that is going to help them understand the story that you are trying to tell. And so we have another example from The Witness. So before I press play, you look at this wonderful view and you're like, what sounds would you put in? You know, it's gorgeous. Maybe let's put in some birds in the trees, like something very pleasant. Maybe like a little like, you know, skittering of like a mouse or something through the grass, a little movement here and there. Just things that are like very nice. There we go. Loading. Hold on. Okay, maybe you like kind of heard a little bit of that. There's no birds. There's nothing there. It's wind. It's wind. It's your footsteps. Why? Why was that the choice? And that's because in the story of The Witness, you're on an island that's isolated and has no form of human interaction, human kind of manipulation. And so you're kind of just left with like this empty world. Now, that doesn't mean that like the ambience is sort of like, you know, lacking in it. You still have the ability to create beautiful ambiences for that. But you can take the idea that's like, you know, what's the story I'm trying to tell with these ambiences that no one's there, it's isolated. Take stuff out. Do whatever you want. No one's ever really done too many games that are like, no, there's no flora, there's no fauna in all of this area. Yeah, because it's integral to the story specifically. How much time do I have left? Whoa! All right, cool. All right, well, I'm gonna hit this one. Okay, so final thought on adding stories to your sounds is, so we've gone from kind of like the specific sound design assets, we've gone from developing the world, and now let's go full on lore dumps. You have the ability to play and create these wonderful narratives in it. And so this is coming from the indie game Mundan. And basically what you're at is like you're in the main villain's layer, and you get dunked into water, and there's the realism aspect of it, but there's also like some hyper realism, and then there is additions to the story. So if you can hear it, there's bells under it. And what I'm trying to do with that idea is having fun playing and being like, okay, we're getting dunked in water. Let's do some word association. It's a baptism. It's another world. We're going into another world, which is why you hear the ritualistic bells just underneath water very cleanly. It's not like it's processed underneath the water like they're underwater bells. It's very clean. And so you have the ability to kind of, I don't want to say hijack the story, but add to it in a way that's really fulfilling for every specific moment. All right, I've got some like going outside the boxes, but I don't. Let's do key takeaways for you. All right, so some of the key takeaways that I want from all of you to come out of this talk with are: 1, tell a story through sound. It's the most important thing that we can do as sound designers, as game developers. Most importantly, maybe even, yeah, probably the most important is play. Have fun. Tell a story. We loved growing up telling stories and like making up fun and silly things. Nothing has changed from that. Keep going. The more that you put into the story, the more your audience is going to get out of it, because it's going to create that depth. Use inspiration. Steal stuff. Because when things work, they work because the audience is like, ah, yes, I connected with that. Keep that through line going and like add to it, manipulate it, try to like, utilize it in fun ways. You're also allowed to completely throw preconceived notions out the window, because if you rely too heavily on inspiration or stealing things, then that's going to get a little bit stagnant. Anytime that you're able to subvert the audience's expectations, whether they know it or not, the audience sits up and they're like, wait, why did that sound like that? Why was that there? Because it was so integral to the person's storytelling process that they were like, well, the island isn't going to have any birds or ambiances. And so they go, wow, that's a novel, fun idea. Throw that preconceived notion out the window. And then, I know I said most importantly of all for like a couple of these. They're all incredibly important. Most importantly of all, tell your story. We're all creatives here. Have a wonderful time telling whatever story you want to, and playing, using your inspiration, throwing preconceived notions out the window, and again, telling your story. Thank you. That's my talk for y'all. You can find me at Eric@Lorenz Audio. Feel free to shoot me a message if you ever want to like chat audio. I am a terrible emailer, so email me twice, and I will get back to you. So yeah, questions.
So there's some sort of players who will turn off music. I wanted to ask you questions. One, do you think this has to be genre of game? And are there any things that you can do with your audio immediately at the beginning and not during
Yes, okay, so the question is, for the players that immediately turn off their audio, music and sound effects, or just like one or the other? Okay, so players aren't listening to audio. What's wrong with that? Nothing, really. I mean, obviously, I want everyone to experience the wonders of the music and the sound effects of certain things, but we can't quite really tell them not to do that. Some tips and tricks to kind of like ease that in is to level out like mixing. So let's say you're playing a game, you boot it up, and it's like boom, bam, like huge stuff, and you reach for that volume knob, and you're like, let's turn it down a little bit. Like that starts the friction aspect. So kind of like mixing your game in the same way that like other games are mixed. Also very important to, like, if you're developing a game, just say, all right, I'm going to open up this one fun game that I love and find the right volume level, keep it there, play your game. Do you instinctively go for the volume knob? If you do, either it tells you you need to turn the game up or you need to turn the game down. I know that doesn't really answer your question because, I mean, it's been one of those things for years. Like Spotify was like, yo, in-game music Spotify. And we were like, thanks, buddy. You really got our back. So that's probably not going to change. Okay, I'm going to, you? And then, yes. Yes.
Going back to your previous point about how like great artists feel. So I've been doing some sound design work on a couple of projects for the past couple of years, like 3 years, and it's like going back to what you said about great artists feel. What is it? Yeah, I'm not the best when it comes to Foley. I don't have the best equipment for it, so most of the time I just go to a sound library. Everyone just has like free sound effects, and I just take those and I just put them in Audacity. I just tweak them a little bit, some plugins and whatnot. But ask is that kind of just like I don't know if that's like what being a great, if that's what like a lot of sound designers and like professional and all that. But like when I say professional, I mean some that are in industry or some that have been doing it for longer than I have. Is that like a very common thing? Because I feel like I'm kind of like
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm like, man, I wanted to be a sound designer, but like, is this how I'm? Is this my creative process? I feel like I'm not really like thinking.
Yeah. For dramatic effect, I'll initially just be like, yes, totally, absolutely. I haven't recorded a sound in months. I just use sound effect libraries, and some of my friends make sounds sometimes, and I use that. There's nothing wrong. So the question for the video is, uh, if great artists steal, it basically, is it okay that I'm using someone else's sound for my games and still call myself a sound designer, sort of?
I predict good artists borrow, great artists steal. I'm like, I get the good artist part, and I kind of understand the great artist steal kind of thing. Like, people kind of just like, oh, I'm gonna take that and try to, like, but I like interpreted it as like creators take that thing and then they kind of just like make it their own while still holding onto that foundation of what made that work of art.
Yeah.
Like great.
Yeah. So also, especially when it comes to like individual sounds, rest be assured, when you're creating your artwork, which is the game itself, if you're taking one sound and saying, all right, cool, this is that, oh no, am I a hack because I'm using someone else's work? No, your work is the game. It's the whole thing. It's the vast majority of all of the sounds that are within it. It doesn't really matter. And even I think I was playing the new Silent Hill F. There are 2 samples in there that I'm like, you did nothing to them, but it works. It's called the vine boom, and it's like you hit a tub, and I was like, oh, there's the vine boom. It's almost like you gotta get your first steps out, and just because one sound might be like someone else's work, yeah, the licensing is specifically so that way you can do that. Free sound, all of the, like, if you buy sound libraries, it's Creative Commons. You can do whatever you want. You can. Oh yeah, same. And then yes.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Whenever you played those videos, when I first saw like the thumbnail, I'm like, this game looks like ass. And then you played it, and I'm like, wait, are those 4K textures? Oh my god, this is so realistic. The rocks are falling down. I can almost see them because of just from the audio. So,
and like we see a bunch of that very often in playtesting, where like things look good, but they look bad because the SFX is ass. So, what's your opinion on that, and how do I like know if SFX is the problem?
Okay, so yeah, question is kind of like when visuals might not be, let's say, kind of realistic. If they're kind of stylized in a way, and then you're playing the game and you're like, I can't tell if we need to up-res these graphics or focus on the sound effects. I would really say, like, in terms of the visuals, if the visual person is like, this is the style we're going for, obviously check in with them and see like, do we want to update these? And if they're like, no, this is kind of like does that, then that'll immediately tell you update the sound effects. And if it's kind of like this sort of in between, try updating the sound effects. And which this might create this sort of like, all right, the asset is here visually and sound wise. We update, oh, it's going to be great. But now the visuals look kind of bad. And then, well, now the visuals up here. Okay, well, now, and then next thing you know, you're switching to Unreal Engine. So it just we have this like kind of saying that's in audio, because there's so many things that we can do in so little time that we have, is like when you're making a game, really you're hammering down the highest pegs. And so if you have this rock that looks bad, maybe it sounds bad, that's a high peg. All right, let's put it down here. Everything else is kind of around here. All right, we got another high peg. Do that. So if it's good enough, leave it alone. But if it hits you in some sort of weird way, I mean, I'm always like, update the sound effects. It's pretty fun, and see if that changes the outcome of the way that you perceive it.
Have you ever waded into the wacky world of like using different convolution reverbs for every room that the player character is in?
Every room, I mean, essentially.
Because I think you can like derive the algorithm real time using rays, more or less.
Oh yeah, I mean that's intensive. I haven't been on any projects that utilize that, but the tech is wild and it's really cool, and it's starting to get a little bit better. But I have done like hand placement stuff, and so like really the effect that you're trying to get with all of that is like the realism of the world to inhabit, the way that our reality can be kind of like baked into this digital version of our world, and kind of have a one-to-one to the best that we can. Wow, I lost my train of thought. Wow, I really went off on that. No, I haven't, but it's great tech. It's just like, idiot. Yes.
Kind of following up from that, question that I've had is somebody, so I'm a music tech major here, and I'm personally like learning about
Yeah.
and it seems to me like a lot of sound design is like thinking of like the workflow, for example, like the first elevator effect is like really creepy. It's like getting one creep, and then like choosing envelopes for like fading in and out. It's like repetition. So like it might start off creepy slowly and then ramp up speed as it goes. So it's kind of like taking these different sounds and dissecting things such as like rhythmic changes, not necessarily Doppler, but like pitch changes like over time. And it's kind of asked like how do you slash how have you like built up that like conquer like dissection of sound, and how like analyzing how would I recreate this digitally?
No. And I'd say like my answer is, especially for games, like you're on the right track for like understanding that, like you have this elevator sound, and then it like kind of morphs into this something else. Maybe the rhythm changes a little bit, and that kind of goes to this this it's like it's a word, it's a phrase that's kind of like ear fatigue, and what you want to do is like have it start out in a way, and then it like morphs into something else. You're always kind of like, this is changing, and it gives that hyper realism of like the reality of the elevator shaft going down is like it's always kind of the same. But once it's all the same, your ears psychoacoustically kind of start like phasing it out, like it's not important anymore. And so if this is like an important elevator, shift it and kind of like let it go a little bit slower, let it go a little bit faster. Just keep the listener like engaged in it. It'll do wonders for kind of like the presentation of your audio. And so yeah, you can do that in many different ways. Either it's like taking different samples and crossfading them, so that way like you have this section that's like the clunky bit, and then this section that's kind of like the pulley system bit, and let it kind of just flow in and out of itself, so that way you prevent ear fatigue, and players are always like, man, this is such a cool elevator that's like, you know, decrepit and like old, and it's constantly like shifting. It's almost like musical. Does that answer your question? Okay, yeah.
So I have a question. I'm wondering if this is like trying to figure out if there is like a culture behind like majority of people who do like sound design, in the sense that like, well, for example, I know like games went through that period of time where like everything started to be sort of greenscape, like the color grade used to be very green or sort of gray. Now it's like the vibrant colors or the super realism. In the same sense, like I know older games like usually like a lot more punchy, clicky, and like absolute noises. Where now it seems like there's more of like this like less misty, unabsolute noise. I mean, like sound design. Like I feel like good examples like a Mega Man or like a Mega Man UI, like when you go into the UI or like a Metal Gear Solid, sounds that are so memorable to us. Where like now it seems like on the flip side, there's a lot of noises that so, I mean, it's smooth in the way that they sort of breathe, like they sort of go into itself and then go out. But like the UI of a PlayStation 2 when it starts up to like when your CD is not destroyed and you get the
Yeah.
sound to like everything's so.
Yeah.
So
So
this is like tying to what his question was with like why I feel like certain people are not wearing headphones or as engaged because like the noise aren't as memorable. There's a good like it makes a soundscape, but I don't know. Would you agree with like this?
yeah. I mean, I totally do, because, you know, way back when video games were dealing with, I don't know, like bytes, you know, not terabytes, not gigabytes, like just bytes.
Like the hardware.
Yeah, and then so what you had to do with that was you had such a small palette of things that it ended up just becoming iconic, and then moving into the PS2 area where we had more things, but we still had very limited budgets for it, and it created this almost like iconography for like these certain sounds, because you kept hearing them over and over again. And the more we kind of like progress into that, the more bandwidth we're able to have. So that way, like, you know, it is kind of a little bit of a lost art where like the PS2 games, like your footsteps are just like 3 samples. And so you, and it like never changes. But now you almost like don't really notice that. And
I'm sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
So what like, but it seems like it's like breathing a lot of like I have a lot more memorable sounds. Like it seems like there being a ceiling on how much your capabilities were. I know like a lot of the synth tech, a lot of the tools that you could use were very limited. You have the computer in the same way, automation, all that really wasn't the same thing. It seems like with that ceiling, they used it to be more creative. Where now that there is no ceiling when it comes to sound design, I'm hearing yes, the different noises, but they all say the same thing. I don't know if that's like a cultural thing in like the sound design.
Yeah, because like essentially what you're talking about is like, because we have more technology, you know, we're almost like, it's like as if we're losing that iconography of like, these are like specific sounds, and kind of, you know, being a little sad about it. But there is totally an iconography that's nowadays, and it's kind of this like specific mid-range punchy synthy. And then so I think in 20 years, people are going to look back and be like, man, don't you just miss the like the mid-range punchy synthy like explosion, and you hear everything go like some bass drops, and like it's just, it's the evolution of media. It's always going to have that, and you can utilize that, you know, the revival of like PS1 era games is like directly influenced by that feeling of like, man, wasn't it great when we had like less or more limitations on things?
I just feel like games back then were more defined by their sound because there was a visual limitation. Where now, since visuals and your quality can be so high, people are starting
Yeah.
to not put as much, or designers or coders are not putting as much attention around the importance of like not just realist, like sort of like the noises that you were referring to with I forgot what her name is, picking up the bolts,
Yeah.
and things like that. It seems like those everything is becoming so realistic, or just sort of like I don't know, not made to just overly stand out.
Yeah, and that goes to like ear fatigue. I don't have a perfect answer for you, and it's kind of hard to be like a little fatalist and be like, it's just the way it's going. Oh, okay, yeah, but like it's tried and true. Like you're always gonna have this path of like the things that have been left behind. What are the things that are in the present, and complete unknown on what the future is. Okay, probably final question.
I don't know if you did you do the sound design on the like folk horror game?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you could speak to this at all, but it really caught my ear. How like at the same time as the menu sounds are like very organic and have these sticks, there's also in the background this like kind of tonal synthy, a little bit like anachronistic, this really cool like ambient pad over it.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it was a very interesting contrast.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back to it. Is it? Oh, sorry. That's the other one. Ah, yes, yeah. It's like a kind of like a singing bowl sort of thing. Oh, I just totally undid that. Anywho, yeah. So that's specifically a fun. Glad you pointed that out. That's specifically this asset right here, which is like the little girl's amulet, and it's one of those things that like persisted. So like the camera for the main menu is like, yeah, we're right here. Our audio listener is right here, and it gives you're like, oh wait, I hear that. Should I take it out? No, I kind of like it. It's kind of nice. And then so you kind of like develop it a little more, so that way when you're in this scene, it's not overpowering, it's not completely gone. It keeps the player's kind of like mind still on, like, oh yeah, that's right. This game's kind of about this little girl. Did I do it? Did I go way over?